though, yes, we're not really in the big part of the off season at this point, there are still some hot free agents still on the market. And the biggest one, Mike, I know you wanted to talk about it, so I guess this will be the one we'll get to right now, just because we're getting up against before we have to go to break for this one. And Yoenis Cespedes. And supposedly, from what I've been hearing, he is torn between coming to the Mets, or no, staying with the Mets and going to the Nationals. Personally, as a Met fan, I do not want him to go to the Nationals at all. Because then, and we spoke about this last night, actually. First of all, where are you going to put him if you're the Nationals?
No, absolutely. I mean, it'll be difficult. I mean, Jason Worth would probably transition to a bench role. Like I told you last night, though, if the Nationals are getting involved, they're really reaching desperation point, though. I mean, this just strikes me as, they collapsed last season after being expected to run away with the division and walk into the World Series. They lost so many players this offseason. They've lost Jordan Zimmerman, Doug Fister, and Ian Desmond are free agents. They traded away Yoenis Escobar, and Daynard Span left them. And, all they've really done to be able to replace these guys is they traded for Ben Revere, and because they were able to do so little, the only thing they could do is, if we're not going anywhere, we're going to try to hurt our rival. They gave Daniel Murphy a 3-year contract that, in my opinion, he isn't worth, and now they're making the play for Cespedes here. So, and $100 million in 5 years for a guy like Cespedes, to me, is way too much.
Well, that's the thing that I don't understand. I mean, Cespedes is what, in his mid-30s, I think?
No, he's going to be 30. He's going to be 31 this coming season. But he's always been a high strikeout guy, and he never hit more than 26 home runs in a season until his contract year this past season. So this is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this way. In the end, I mean, hopefully he does come back to the Mets, but let's be honest, we're both Mets fans. The Wilpons are never going to spend money to get him back here. He's not going to. Unfortunately, as much as I want to sit here on January 22nd and say that Cespedes will be back as a Met by next week, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, it kills me inside because I think he was a phenomenal player for the Mets last year. But let's be honest, the Mets have never been the type of team where they're willing to shell out money to get good players. I mean, yeah, they did it when it came to this past trading deadline when they got Cespedes and Tyler Clippard and all those guys. But let's be honest, it's still, when you look down to the core of it, it's still the New York Mets. They're still going to be that same team that doesn't like to do anything, so to speak.
Well, I'm going to be honest, John. I got a few issues with some of the things you said there. I get where you're coming from. But here's the thing, and I mean no disrespect here. I have grown to hate the phrase spending money when it comes to trying to improve your team, because spending money is not the same thing as improving a ball club. Now, the Wilpons have been very frugal with their money over the last few years, but I want to get past this idea that the Wilpons will never spend money to improve. If you look back at the last 20, 25 years, the Wilpons and Met ownership has spent money to try to improve their ball club, but every time they do it, it almost never works out for them. In 1992, they spent more money than any other franchise to put together a team that included guys like Bobby Bonilla and Eddie Murray and Brett Saberhagen, and it was called the worst team money could buy, and by 1993, they had lost over 100 games. In 2002, they spent money to bring in guys like Mo Vaughn and Roger Cedeno and Roberto Alomar, and it was dubbed the second worst team that money could buy. In the Minaya administration, they threw money around like it was going out of style, money that handcuffed Sandy Alderson for the first 3 or 4 years that he was in power as general manager. So we've seen in the past, when the Mets try to spend money, it almost never works out. It's not about spending money in baseball. We've seen that with teams like the Kansas City Royals and teams like the San Francisco Giants, who have won 4 of the last 6 World Series. spending money is not the same thing as improving your ball club, and spending money does not guarantee you anything. Look at the Los Angeles Dodgers and look at the New York Yankees for any sort of proof you need that spending money does not equal a championship. The Yankees have spent more money in the last 15 years than the top 3 franchises in baseball combined, and they have won 1 championship since 2001. The way they built their dynasty in the late 90s was after George Steinbrenner was suspended and Buck Showalter and Gene Stick Michael rebuilt their farm system around guys like Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettitte, and Mariano Rivera. Then they made some quality pickups in guys like Paul O'Neill, Tino Martinez, and Scott Brosius, and then they supplemented them with some contracts. Roger Clemens was the first big money contract that the Yankees spent in the 90s that actually worked out for them. And then after 2000, they started spending money on any high-price free agent you can name, from Jason Giambi to A.J. Burnett to Carl Pavano. And I'm sorry, I don't mean A.J. Burnett at that point. I meant Carl Pavano. But the fact is, after 2001, everything they did to spend money to build a winner did not work out. It worked out one time in 15 years. That was 2009. And if you honestly think those contracts are still working out for the Yankees, you're not seeing what Alex Rodriguez and CC Sabathia are doing to their payroll right now. Those guys are going to be on the books for another 2 years, and as a result of that, the Yankees have been unable to make any free agent moves this year. So there's plenty of dangers when it comes to spending money as if it's going out of style. And the fact is, a player like Yoenis Cespedes, going to be 31 years old next season, never hit more than 26 home runs until his contract year. How many players have we seen have career seasons in their contract year, get the big money, and then you never hear them do anything all-star caliber ever again? Almost too many to count. And this is a guy who strikes out over 140 times a year. The fact that the Mets are unwilling to go over 3 years, to me, shows serious financial restraint, and I'm fine with them doing that. It's not that they won't spend money. It's that they're not going to do it for someone they feel isn't the right player. Alderson, listen, we know Alderson was never in favor of bringing Cespedes in. He brought Cespedes in after the failed Carlos Gomez trade, after he couldn't get Jason Upton, and after he couldn't get Jay Bruce. He was 4th on the list, and of all people, Jeff Wilpon was actually the one who told Alderson to go out and get Cespedes. But to finish up this rant, and I apologize for going off on the tangent there, this morning the Mets actually met with Cespedes representatives at Rock Nation, and from everything I heard, they offered him a 3-year deal with an opt-out after the first year. It was also reported on Mets blog that they were willing to go beyond 3 years if they had to. How far beyond 3 years, we don't know. But that is the latest that we've heard on it. And in my opinion, the fact that this is all drawing out shows that Cespedes is deciding between whether or not he wants to get paid or he wants to be on a team that has a shot at the World Series. Because if he goes to the Nationals, in my opinion, this makes them marginally better, but it does not put them over the top, and it does not make them a better ball club than the New York Mets. The Mets still have the better pitching, and thanks to the acquisition of Antonio Bastardo, they actually have an improved bullpen this year. And despite what anybody else thinks, they have a better lineup now than they did before they got Yoenis Cespedes last season. So if anybody thinks Cespedes going to the Nationals means that the Mets won't be in the playoffs next season, you're fooling yourself. And remember, spending money does not equal improving your team. It's not about spending money. It's about making the right moves.